Welcome guys to my long-awaited, much anticipated 3v3 meta picks. I know you were so keen for this in the YouTube comments, and so after not playing 3v3 for 7 months, I sat down on stream today and I played a butt ton of 3v3. I got wrecked for 3 games in a row. Really, got absolutely smashed. But then I started to work out what to play. And things got a lot better for me, as well as the matchmaking being garbage. But let's move on into carries. And I think I've been talking to a lot of high elo 3v3 players right now, and they've given me a good spread of what is good and what is not. I've made some of my own decisions, as well as having played a bit of 3v3 across this morning at sort of tier 9, tier 10-ish. I kind of have a good idea of what is good or not. And the first pick that I think is pretty decent is Silvernail. Now, Silvernail is in a pretty good spot right now, in 5v5 especially, but in 3v3, there's lots of places to set up traps because the jungle is more enclosed. There are less people to threaten you in team fights, so that makes maneuvering a bit easier, and his low mobility won't be punished so much. And overall, his damage output is insane. I think there are a few builds you can go. I think the Sorrowblade Tension Bow Tornado Trigger build is fine, but the highest win rate build right now, as you can see on VG Pro, is the Serpent's Mask Breaking Point Bonesaw. I do think Bonesaw is a really good item right now, so any carries that can make use of it are in a great space, so feel free to try out what build works for you, and again, it depends on the kind of composition that you're going up against. Let's talk about Celeste now. Celeste, she is traditionally, in this current meta in 3v3, mages don't do so well, especially mages that can't impact the early game so much. But Celeste specifically is pretty good at impacting the early game, especially skirmishes, which are so heavy around that jungle treant as well as in the early game. Her level 2 is really strong because of her stun, and you scale up really quickly. You get levels really quickly, so she can reach level 8. You get items really quickly, so you can get to your late game build more readily. And overall, she actually does well throughout the game. So I think Celeste is in a good spot in the 3v3 meta, and I think overall, a pick you should consider if you're a mage player for sure. Alright, and I think what you'll notice is a lot of sort of picks transition between 5v5 and 3v3. Often what is good in 5v5 will end up being good in 3v3 with the exception of a few things. Gwen is one of those picks. She's strong in 3v3 in the lane right now. She's a snowball pick, and 3v3 is a very snowbally game mode. If you get the advantage and your team is good, you can close the game out by just strangling your opponents because it's such a small map. You can just go into the enemy jungle, you can take the gold miner really quickly. There's very small areas for comebacks in this game, and often you'll find yourself having to stall out to the late game, and especially against teams that don't know what they're doing, you can often do that. But teams that do know what they're doing and they just continuously take your gold, they starve your jungle, they take the gold miner, those kind of things can really, really stop you from having any potential to get back into the game. Something that I've noticed in 3v3 is that Idris is like super top tier. But it's not just like weapon power Idris or CP Idris. It's actually this hybrid Idris build that's Dragon's Eye alternating current, and then I think the weapon power items sometimes vary. I've seen Tension Bow, Serpent's Mask, I've seen Sorrowblade, Poison Shiv. There's always some kind of lifesteal in there, and it has to be a combination that obviously activates your heroic perk at 100 weapon power. But overall, Idris hybrid in 3v3 seems like ridiculous. It just seems ridiculous, and so I'll have to sort of see how this transpires, but this is what I've seen the majority of lane Idrises go, and it does a lot of damage, it's super mobile, and very, very good at being both an assassin and a scaling ranged carry at the same time. And finally, this is one that you might not consider meta right now, but with the changes to Tension Bow, I genuinely think Vox is really good in 3v3 again. I think Kinetic could also have been here. I think Kinetic is really strong in 3v3, but Vox, you can build him sustainy, so you can go for a Serpent's Mask build, you can go the CP Vox depending on your jungle, so it gives you a bit of flexibility. I think Vox is actually really, really good again, and overall in 3v3 you'll probably see him played a lot more. The builds that I've seen work well are things like Serpent's Mask Breaking Point Tornado Trigger. I've seen Sorrowblade Bonesaw Tornado Trigger. I've seen Serpent's Mask Bonesaw Tornado Trigger. Even the classic Poison Shiv Breaking Point, and then whatever else you want on top of that, like a Sorrowblade. I've seen those work well as well. So I think Vox is very flexible and a good place in the map. Alright, moving on to the jungle. Wow, this is so easy compared to 5v5. I had to do like top lane, mid lane, bot lane. But in 3v3, I just have to do like carry, jungle, captain. I should do more of these. So, In jungle, you'll notice that there are some obnoxious picks right now, and the starting pick that I'm going to work with here is Anchor. Anchor is obnoxious. She's in a very strong position in 3v3, mainly because it's very easy for her to stay safer in team fights. One of the things that Anchor did struggle with in 5v5 is that often you'd get to a point where there were so many people body blocking you that it was very difficult to land on your target, and after you'd used your ultimate, there was very little to keep you safe. Even though you're super mobile, even you have the movement speed and the resets, often just because of the tanky 5v5 meta, Anchor ended up falling off pretty hard if she didn't snowball, and the Slumbering Husk kind of dominance in terms of defensive items really shut Anchor down. In 3v3 though, because there are less people, it's much easier to negotiate team fights and you can stay safer, and even if they do get Slumbering Husk, you can reposition, wait for it to drop off and try to find another entrance to a team fight. She's really strong right now in 3v3. Batiste is pretty strong for the pure fact that his CP build path is good versus squishies. He's actually kind of a counter to Anchor, and with Anchor being so strong, Batiste is obviously going to be up thereabouts as well. And actually, he just functions quite well in his own right. I think Batiste's ultimate is really strong in 3v3 because of the cooldown nerf on Crucible, so you're going to get more out of your Crucible when you use it. Oh, sorry, get less out of your Crucible because the cooldown is up, so you get more out of your ultimate from Batiste. And I think Batiste can go CP or weapon power, but I would recommend for 3v3 CP being the better build path. It's just more reliable. You don't have to be relying on getting up close and personal in fights. So I think overall, Batiste is in a very strong position in 3v3. You'll be waiting for the addition of this guy. I know, you bated breath. Yes, it's the guy that gets banned almost every game, Cruel. Now, Cruel is like one of these funny picks in 3v3 that he can snowball like crazy. His 1v1 potential is super strong. With the changes to his lifesteal, that makes him like almost unkillable in certain scenarios. However, if he gets behind early, he kind of sucks. Like, trust me, I played some Cruel today. They picked CP Sky, which is, you know, one of the better counters into Cruel. I got absolutely slammed, honestly. I got absolutely slammed by a CP Sky. So Sky as a counter to Cruel can happen, and you do have to be aware of that. But Cruel in his own respective right is a really good pick. And I think the best item in Cruel right now is actually Bonesaw. So building a build path around Bonesaw is good. I actually think Poison Shiv Bonesaw or even Shiver Steel Bonesaw are both really strong choices. Moving on, Lance. Lance is in a great position, both captain and jungle on 3v3, but his jungle role, he's got a lot of early damage. He's a very snowbally jungler. He can be very dominant in terms of setting up fights around the jungle and also ganking lane. So I'd say that Lance is probably one of the better junglers in 3v3, just for that pure reason. He's very good into things like the Cruel as well, because you can CC him and stop him from getting to your carries. And snowballing 3v3 is kind of the meta. Like, if you snowball 3v3, you're winning. Most of the time. There are limited room for comebacks in 3v3, which is why I personally prefer 5v5, because there is much more room for comeback. But in 3v3, you're definitely at the mercy of a snowball, and Lance is good at setting up snowballs. And finally, I was actually struggling to find someone that I thought was absolutely insane, and then I realized that Lorelei is absolutely insane. She's really good both captain and jungler, I think, in 3v3. She's great early duelist, great zone control. Her splashdown has much more impact in 3v3 because of the enclosed areas. So yeah, I think Lorelei is in a super strong position in 3v3 and also as a captain in the jungle too. So she's got captain role, she's got jungle role, a little bit like Lance, can do both well, but Lorelei is just that good at both that I've decided to put her here, and you'll notice that she's going to make an appearance in the captain section. Sorry, spoiler alert. So those are my 5 junglers that I think are really good on 3v3 right now, and sorry if I missed anyone out, but like I said, I hadn't played 3v3 for about 7 months before today. And finally, Captain. If you thought that Jungle had some obnoxious picks, Captain has one of the most ridiculous picks in 3v3, and a good 3v3 team will abuse this and snowball your early game to a point where you just find it impossible. Trust me, lost to one of them today, and it was tough. That's a churny boy that I'm talking about. He's definitely in my top 5. Like I said, there are a lot of good picks right now. I think Yates is in a really strong position in 3v3. Now, Yates in 5v5 maybe doesn't feel as strong as he should. Individual picks with his hook don't often result in net gains on the map. And also because the sort of the map is so open and a lot of fights take place in lane or open in the river, you don't often get the kind of surprise factor of the Yates hook that you would get in the jungle if you were fighting in jungle areas. 3v3 has so many places to make Yates hooks. So many places. And obviously as a result of that, Yates becomes much better. And also the fact that individual picks puts you into a 3 versus 2, which is a 33% gain in terms of your man advantage. So by cutting the opponents down to that point, you can actually get sizable advantages on the map. And that means like net objectives like the gold miner and that kind of thing. Lorelei is in a super strong position in 3v3, like I said, in the jungle, but also as a captain. Lorelei's captain is really strong. She's very good at controlling areas with splashdown in all of those enclosed jungle fights. And you know, most fights in 3v3 tend to take place in the jungle. And that's where Lorelei really shines, just controlling the movement speed, controlling choke points with splashdown, and the fact that her ultimate is very good at protecting carries. Her ultimate is super strong at dealing with carries, and you really only have one choice when it comes to using your ultimate. And for 5v5, you often have a bit more decision making to make in terms of using Lorelei's ultimate, but in 3v3, you've basically got one carry that you want to protect. Sometimes you can use it on the jungler, but 99 times out of 100, you're going to use it on your carry. Like I said, this guy, his early game presence is just dumb. Like, you hook 2 people, you're sustaining an insane amount of damage because of the early skirmishes that take place, and as a result, you don't even need a flask. But then you've got a flask anyway, so you're just unkillable. And he can constantly walk into the jungle with the jungler. He makes it impossible for your life to even get your back camps in the early game. He's such a snowball hero. I ban this guy 100% of the time if I'm not first pick. He 100% needs banning. He also needs toning and down in 3v3, but the problem is if you tone him down in 3v3, he gets very weak in 5v5, and that's the kind of awkward limbo that you put in with some of these heroes. Arden, Dad is still pretty strong. He, again, really good at kiting for your carry. Gauntlet is a great engage and kiting tool. Blood for Blood is quite strong in terms of base damages. He's a very good early duelist, which is really important in 3v3, especially because early skirmishes can often end up winning you the game. So yeah, I think Arden is in a great position. You might notice that a lot of these item builds are the same for Captain. That is because use your brain. You know, you're usually going to need a Fountain, a Crucible, and War Treads, which is why I put them down as a core. Everything else is up to you depending on the game that you're playing in. So, again, use your brain when you're thinking about Captain builds. But those 3 items generally are core, so we wouldn't need to change those a lot of times. And finally, this guy, this beefy boy, Finn. Very good early duelist. He is really strong in 3v3 for the reason that I think he is so hard to get past. Like, there are limited angles that you can flank in 3v3, and a lot of the times that requires going straight through Finn. If he's on the front side of his team, protecting his carries, you kind of have to go through the Finn. And as the game scales up, he gets insanely tanky and often very difficult to deal with. And I think, as a result, his early skirmishing, the fact that you get to level 8, his Quibble is kind of overpowered. He's just in a very strong position, and I really like Finn in the 3v3 meta. Wasn't sold on him when I first played him a few times, but now I'm pretty certain that he's a top-tier captain, in my opinion. Right, guys, thank you so much for watching this incredibly well-thought-out and very well-researched video that I didn't do after only playing a full morning of 3v3 games. Enjoy, I guess?